First week back in Canada, min pure on Sunday, so not doing my usual squat session on Sunday today because I did mock meet yesterday, which is unplanned. It's for a charity, and I'm not going to squat after doing 9 attempts yesterday, even though I didn't like work up to maxes. Hadn't done any training for it, of course, because I pretty much just came off a 2-week pivot cycle. Worked up to around 90% of my 1RMs. I think I squatted 230, bench 147, deadlifted 275. So it's nice to know that I can hit those on any day without any practice for singles. And yeah, that's kind of promising. Anyway, here to train calves, arms and delts. And I'm just in the middle of doing some sets on calf raises at the moment. And if there's one thing that is very common to see with people who have small calves is bouncing, right? So when they're actually performing the calf raises, they are essentially just using their Achilles tendon. They're not using actual calf muscles. So what that kind of looks like is when they are in this position here, they come down to the bottom and then they're just kind of bouncing through the reps like this. I could pretty much do this all day. I could probably do it with the full sack and get like 15, 20 plus reps, right? Without it contributing any meaningful mechanical tension to my actual calves. When you're training calves, you want to spend as much time and attention with them as possible. And that is gonna mean controlling the eccentric and pausing in the lengthened position. So when you're in the stretch and your heel is below your toe line. And there is some research looking at the calves specifically and seeing how they respond to stretch mediated hypertrophy and just like stretching in general. There's one study that compared training the bottom half of range of motion, so when you're in the biggest stretch, compared to the top half, compared to full range of motion, so going through the bottom all the way to the top. And just training the bottom range of motion seemed to provide better results than training the full range of motion, and even way better than just training the top range of motion. So if you are looking to get bigger calves, spend a little bit more time in the stretch and really trying to maximize the kind of tension you feel in that position is probably going to be way more beneficial, and something I've been doing over like the last few months. And my calves definitely look bigger. I don't know if they are, haven't measured them, but they feel bigger, they feel stronger. So a lot of people give out about the L preacher curl and don't seem to get a lot out of their arm exercises, and one of the reasons for that is they just don't actually warm up their arms. So like when you are acclimating to a set of bench press, you'll typically acclimate the weights until you get to your working weight, but very few people will do that with their arms. So they'll go straight from like doing no curls to going straight to like 20 kilos or something like that. So if you do want to get more from your arm training, make sure to warm up your actual arms, okay? So I'm starting off here with a 20. I'm gonna go all the way up to like a 40 or so. So I'm gonna go 20, 30, 35, then 40. And I'm not gonna push any of the sets to failure. I'm just gonna get some good blood flow into the likes of my elbow flexors, just so that they don't get cranky during the sets. So another really important part of your warm up is to make sure that you are going through the entire range of motion that you wanna train. So I wanna come down all the way to the very bottom, because that's where this particular exercise is going to be the hardest, and it's also the part where most people are going to skip. Most people, when it comes to doing a preacher curl, are going to come down to here and then back up, and what that does is it just feeds your ego, but it doesn't feed your gains. thing that people probably do way more often than they should is changing their programming up. I suppose a lot of times it can just come down to boredom. Sometimes it comes down to plateaus, not all of the time. So for example, this training session, the arm exercises mainly have stayed the same pretty much the entire time, because when it comes to training arms, I think all you really need is like dumbbells and cables. Most arm machines are not great. I have never gotten an arm machine that I've been able to get good connections with, and that's repeatable across gyms. Whereas like using dumbbells, using cables, pretty much can repeat that in any gym like in the world. So I've kept this training session pretty much the exact same for like the last 2 years maybe. And in terms of like actual like loads lifted, the weights lifted have not really gone up that much. However, when it does come to arm training and like particularly small muscle groups, I think it's really important to more so improve your quality over time. Because like if I compare what this session looked like 2 years ago compared to what it feels like now, my range of motion is better, my ability to connect with the muscle through the entire range is better. I feel like I've got more precision within the actual movements themselves, and I feel like I'm able to push that little bit closer to failure, as well as not necessarily have myself getting really fatigued as I do push to that point, and I'm able to repeat it in like subsequent sets and kind of match reps. Because I've been able to do that, I have noticed sizable change in my arms. My arms look way better than they did, even though I have not necessarily increased the weight that I'm lifting. And that's because, again, when it comes to growing muscle, mechanical tension is the main thing. So if you are going to be shifting that tension to connective tissue, for example, you may be lifting the load, but are you actually kind of gaining the hypertrophy stimulus that you want for the actual exercise itself? Without further ado, I'm going to get back into my last set of these cable tricep extensions. Probably one of my favorite tricep extensions to do. Get really good connection, really get a really good stretch at the bottom position of it as well. Let's get into it and then move on to the next exercise. So when doing an incline curl, one of the benefits of doing this versus just doing it seated upright is you're gonna get the arm or the elbow positioned slightly behind the body. So when that happens, the bicep is gonna stretch a little bit more. So you're technically getting a little bit more load into the lengthy position. Now, the resistance curve of this exercise makes it more challenging through the mid to short position. So from here to here versus being really challenging here. So if I want to do 2 lengthened biceps exercises or 2 stretch bicep focused exercises in the session, I'd do this, and then I'd do a face away cable curl so that the resistance is hardest at this bottom position. Now, a big mistake that people make with this exercise is that they will put the incline too low. So you only want to have the incline so much that the elbow is going behind the body, with which you can control, okay? You don't want it going into a position where the dumbbell is actually forcing you into. So if I was lying all the way back here and I had the dumbbell in my hand, I was cranking my shoulder back like this, might put a little bit too much strain on my shoulder joint, and then over time gets aggravated and could potentially get some niggles, some kind of tendonitis. So you only want to go into a position where you can actively control. So essentially, just when you're seated upright, see how far back behind the body you get the elbow without feeling any kind of excessive strain in your shoulder. And that's pretty much the range of motion you want to use. The upright row and lateral raise, specifically with dumbbells, they've been in my program again for like maybe a year and a bit. And even though they're probably like 2 exercises which get like poo-pooed on by like the optimal crowd, they always correlate with my delts looking the biggest. If you do have exercises in your program that go against what may be like optimal, but you connect with, like keep at them, okay? Because like exercise at the end of the day is very individual. With the dumbbell lat raise as well, you can make it better depending on how you perform it. Last week in the video I discussed if you have your like elbow like reaching out to the sides. So that's one component of it. The other component is like the tempo at which you do it, right? If you launch it from the bottom position but try to catch it at the top, you're probably gonna get much better contraction at the top position. And then once you're controlling the eccentric, again, you're gonna get much more out of the rep, versus what typically happens is people launch from the bottom, don't catch it at the top, and then just let it drop back down to the side. That way, you're pretty much letting like gravity, momentum do all the work for you, and you're essentially going to start using the likes of like swinging at the very bottom portion of the motion, versus using the acceleration from the bottom, catching it at the top, and then controlling it all the way down. And if you can do that, you're going to get so much more from doing a dumbbell lat raise.
So after that, my mics decided that it was time to say goodbye. So I'm just finishing off with a voiceover here. So this is my last set of dumbbell lat raises. So you can kind of see there the kind of forward position of my arms, not necessarily directly out to the side, but kind of more in front. And then think about let my elbows drift out to the opposite corners of the rooms. You can see that I'm trying to forcefully accelerate from the bottom position, even though it is quite difficult at this point because my delts are so fried. Catching it at the top and then controlling on the way back down. Finish off with these cable lat raises. So I'm using cuffs here just for a little bit more kind of focus on what my elbows are doing in space. And with this movement here, this is going to be overloading the length positioned, because with the likes of the upright row as well as the dumbbell lat raise, the delts will have gotten a lot of load through the mid and short range position. Now, one reason you can do a lot of volume on delts is because you rarely get a challenge in the kind of length position, but this is going to be one of the best options for getting more load in through that position because of the way the cable is oriented relative to my humerus. So as well, you'll see towards the final few reps of these, I'm doing some lengthened partials, mainly to get a little bit more kind of stress in them. Delts recover really quickly, so allowing myself to get a little bit more tension at that bottom position when I can't get into the top position is going to allow me to get a little bit more kind of gains, hopefully over time. It definitely has worked so far. So yeah, gonna wrap up this video now. Hopefully you did enjoy it. Apologies for the fuck up on these last few reps, and yeah, I'll chat to you in the next one.